Good evening. I can hear me. Good evening. My name is Sandra Mattia. I am the Southwest Community Liaison for Baltimore City DOT. We're here tonight to welcome you to the West Patapsco Avenue Rehabilitation Community Presentation. You need it up closer? Okay. Good evening. My name is Sandra Mattia. I am the Southwest Liaison for Baltimore City DOT. We are here this evening to welcome you to the West Patapsco Avenue Rehabilitation Community Meeting. Didn't catch my breath. This meeting is hybrid and it's in person and virtual attendees. Please note that this presentation and meeting will be recorded. During the presentation, we ask that any questions or comments be held until the question and answer and feedback session at the end. Just a couple housekeeping things. The restrooms are on the outside to your left or to your right for men and women. And I'm going to give this mic to the project manager, Mr. Michael Wilmore.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So yeah, this being a hybrid meeting, we're going to do our best we can to accommodate both people here in person and online. But like everything, we always learn, we get better overall. Just as a reminder, this meeting will be recorded for anybody speaking, including myself. All right, so I'll go through these bullet points. I won't read everything, but the projects will be presented by myself as well as representatives from STV. STV is a design engineering firm. They're doing a lot of the engineering for us so we can get this project to advertisement construction. So some of the purposes of this meeting, what we'll be accomplishing, we'll talk about why we're doing the project, the purpose and need, what the existing conditions are, the issues that we have, how we hope to improve things, and then we'll talk about complete street elements and also what to expect during construction somewhat. And we'll go into a little bit of detail about the cost of the project, its schedule, and the challenges. So I mentioned the opportunities we have, but for every opportunity, there is a challenge. And then at the end, we'll have the Q&A, like Sandra was saying. At the end of the meeting, please give us your questions. However, I think if somebody's online, they can just put them in the chat, and then we'll just read them at the end. And then we'll talk more about public outreach afterwards at the end, and then what happens next. All right, so this is that basic who, what, when, where, how, et cetera, that we're going to address here. So when it says stakeholders, to me, stakeholders means anybody that cares. It means anybody who lives there nearby, any business owners, visitors, people seeking services, people that just pass through all the time, people that work there, et cetera. All right, so this is the project limits. So if you notice on the left-hand side up here, it's at Magnolia Avenue. Originally, it had been a little bit further to the south because this project started off with the explicit purpose of just repairing the concrete joints, but we extended it there because we want a logical place to drop off pedestrians. And then on the east side here, it extends to Potee. Originally, the limits were going to be just west of the bridge, but then based on community feedback, we extended it. So any pedestrians coming down will be accommodated all the way to Potee Street. Let me, before you move on, Jamie. So there's a sister project being done by Public Works. That's just off the right of way. They're putting in a storm drain and an outfall, and we'll be connecting to that. And we'll talk more about that later on. But that's off the city right of way, so that won't be part of the DOT project. But what will also be included in that project link is Public Works also has a water line replacement, and that'll be accommodated to our project as well. And the reason we do all this work at once is so we don't tear up the road 3 times, and we don't have 3 different construction phases and 3 different construction times. All right, so the purpose and need, like I said earlier, the basic purpose originally was to restore the concrete. There's a lot of joint problems, and sometimes there's even potholes. And then also, we know there's drainage problems out there. And like I mentioned earlier, there's a new water line. We're going to make sure that can be built with our project. And then also, when we're out there originally, it was obvious that there was a need for pedestrians to be accommodated, but typically there's nowhere for them to go. And then, so we were going to accommodate them anyway, and then the complete street ordinance came out and the design manual came out. So that gave us tools to enhance what we were going to be doing. And of course, this road is on the Baltimore City's master, it's on our bike master plan. So because of that, we want to accommodate bicycles. Anybody out there right now would know this is not a place where you wouldn't want to ride your bicycles. We see people doing it from time to time, but there's a lot of fast speeds out there and it's not a protected space. So yes, we do know about the conditions. A lot of these photographs were from a couple of years ago. Again, that was the original purpose, was to restore the bumpy ride out there. This road was built in the early 60s, so it's like 60 plus years old right now. And we know the problem's just going to keep getting worse. So here's another problem, because these roads downhill, they just get worse over time. Yeah, as you can see here, there's no pedestrian facilities. So somebody's either going to like walk in the street or they create these little cow paths. Yeah, sometimes you do that if you have to, but it would never accommodate somebody in a wheelchair like that. So anything we put on, we might want to make sure people with disabilities can have full access to the road as well. So this is just another picture of the existing conditions here. When I was out there recently, talked about getting worse, there was some like pavement upheaval on the eastbound farmost right lane between the light rail bridge and the bridge over the water. Yeah, so that previous slide, you don't have to bring it back, Jamie, but yeah, it's part of large part of our project will be adding storm drains, repairing storm drains, improving the drainage out there. And here's another existing condition. There's an MTA bus stop right here, and there's absolutely no pedestrian facilities. So we're just dropping people off in the middle of nowhere. So we will work closely with MTA to make sure that we can integrate our sidewalk with their bus stops. Yeah, because we don't want to leave anybody stranded. All right, so the road was in the news not too long ago, but not for good reasons. There was a backup here. There's flooding that occurs from time to time, and that's a result of the existing road not having enough drainage, as well as there was an outfall that much of the road was draining to that has failed, and that was part of the reason why Public Works will be doing their own storm drain improvement project and sending the water to the lake, to the Patapsco River. And this just like a worst case scenario what happened earlier. They got like the rescue out there and water looks pretty deep. So a couple of years ago, MTA installed a partial signal, and the purpose of this was for safety of their buses exiting the light rail station. But during our project, we will complete this so that it'll be a intersection that will accommodate traffic coming in all directions, as well as pedestrians. This really doesn't do it. There's no pedestrian facilities right here because there's not that much of a need, and it's really not accommodating people wanting to cross the road here. All right, so the project says concrete pavement rehabilitation. So rehabilitation means repairing, replacing, modernizing, and sometimes upgrading. So that's kind of an all-inclusive word. And then beyond that, we're doing work often with the curbs where we can keep things in place where we'll do that. But then we'll be adding some street lights, some guardrail modernization, inlets. I was talking about that. The ped lights, pedestrian lights in the commercial area. The commercial area is that, as we define it, it's the area that's west of the light rail entrance. So there'll be some ped lights put in there, like the acorn lights. Because that part of it, the adjacent land use is different. The rest of the project is more industrial or just undeveloped. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the traffic signal at the light rail station, that's going to be completed. And then we'll do everything we can to accommodate pedestrians. There's going to be a shared use path that's going to be about 10 feet wide that accommodates people on scooters or bicyclists or people just walking, etc. And then that'll also be separated from the main part of the road. And STV will show later a typical section of how that plays out. So there's some separation between where the road's going to be and where the pedestrians and bicyclists. And then we'll talk a minute about the lane reductions. Right now it's 3 lanes each way, but ultimately it'll be 2 lanes each way of automobile traffic. And that 3rd lane will be converted to pedestrian use or in some places green space. All right, so this job has a lot of, it's a big team here. There's a lot of coordination going on. I mentioned earlier, DPW has a major drainage system, and this is going to be similar to the project they did over in Cherry Hill, which is like a sister project for them, as well as Public Works is also replacing a 20-inch water line that runs down our project. And then MTA hopes to put in a pedestrian bridge at the light rail crossing. So to facilitate people coming back and forth so they don't, because now I think some people actually cross on the tracks and we want to improve that safety. DOT has another project it's an early design, hasn't advanced too far, but where our project ends at Poche Street, east of that, further to the east, they're looking at some options to improve the user experience. Our bridge section also has a rehab project for the bridges that span over the Patapsco River. So while our project spans over it, we'll be doing the minimal amount of work on the bridge and instead doing the concrete work on either side of it for right now. Copart, that's they own most of the property between the light rail and the bridge itself. They had some redevelopment come in recently, and we'll be tying into that. And then there are some other projects that we're expecting. One is the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. They have this Greenway shared use bicycle path project that they hope to extend all the way to Patapsco. All right, so the last slide I'm presenting right now is some facts about the roadway. Unfortunately, we can't widen the road. That's not an option. Our right-of-way goes back like 5 to 6 feet behind the existing curb. And at that point, we touch base with private property owners. We do everything we can to minimize impacts of private property owners. Sometimes it's unavoidable. For example, just some sidewalk work or driveway entrance. Sometimes the work spills over. So if you're a property owner and you get a letter from us requesting a minor adjustment agreement, you can just call us or we'll just, we just need to work that out with you so the project can progress. The cost, it's already very expensive, so we're looking to minimize that. There are some environmental impacts because we're near the critical area, tidal waters, we gotta get E&S permits. The state has a new general permit for project to disturb more than 1 acre. The roadway overcapacity, this was built before there was going to be the Baltimore Beltway, so there's not a need for 3 lanes. If you're out there right now heading westbound, you can see that one of those lanes is already like blocked off. And so like I said a few minutes ago, we'll convert the 3 lanes each way to 2 lanes, and that was supported by a traffic study that showed that would work. And then we had a lot of internal discussion and debate about how to modernize this road. So there was a very vigorous concept phase that went on. We will be maintaining all the existing left turn bays. And then the lane reductions, we hope that reduce traffic speeds and then also make it safe for everybody. So Vincent, you want to speak next? All right, so this is Vincent, he's with STV.
Thank you, Michael. As Michael said, my name is Vincent. I'm with STV, the design consultant for this project for the city. And I guess for the next few slides, I'll talk about a little bit more of the finer details of what we are proposing now that you've kind of seen the existing conditions, the kind of issues that are probably pretty evident on Patapsco Avenue. So but before we do that, just a little bit more detail, the existing roadway. This is what we call a typical section or a roadway section, just so you guys know. As Michael was describing, this road is a 6-lane road, 3 lanes in each direction. And the lane widths are approximately 10 to 12 feet wide, with the outside lanes being 10 feet and the interior lanes being 12. As Michael was kind of saying, you can kind of see here, today out there are no sidewalks. There are no, there's nowhere, if you're a pedestrian or bicyclist, there's nowhere to go except to be in the street. Other things to note is there's a big raised median in the center. For the most part, a 16-foot median, with the exception of locations where a left turn lane might develop. But for the most part, it's a 16-foot wide median. So because of that, just to reiterate some of the stuff that we will be proposing on this project for improvements to the community. Obviously, we're going to rehabilitate the roadway, whether that means full reconstruction of the roadway or repairs of the concrete pavement, or a combination of both. We've talked about repurposing, or in this case specifically, a lane reduction. Taking out that outside lane. So converting a 6-lane road into a 4-lane road, 2 lanes in each direction. And with that comes opportunity to pull the curbs also further in. And by doing that, there's more real estate to put in things that are actually beneficial for pedestrians and bicyclists. Things like a separated shared use path, continuous sidewalks, which are lacking today, from all the way from Magnolia to Potee. And those facilities will be separated with a green space buffers, which is essentially just a grass buffer. It also helps with pavement reduction. So there's a lot of pavement out there. It never hurts to put a little bit more green space back in. And finally, there's going to be landscaping at select areas, mainly trees located within the median. There's plenty of space, provided that it meets site distance requirements. So to give you an idea of what that actually looks like, here's the proposed roadway section, or the typical sections of what we're going to propose. The project can kind of be divided into kind of 2 sections, with the westerly limits at Magnolia all the way up to light rail station, and then the second half from the light rail to Potee. For the most part, it just kind of gets mirrored. So I'll talk about the first section first, which is Magnolia to the light rail station. As you can see here, what I was kind of talking about was this. I know online you might not be able to see, so maybe my assistant might be able to point to it. But if we can go back. The existing curb right here, that's the existing curb. So we're pulling that forward, and all this space here is now able to be utilized for repurposing for a shared, in this case, a shared use path facility. On the other side, it's going to be an asphalt sidewalk, and we're simply just overlaying the existing pavement to provide that. It will be ADA compliant. You know, there's certain slopes and grades you have to meet for that. Also, what I was talking about earlier, to visualize it now, you can see it better. There's also going to be a grass buffer to separate facility users with motorists and traffic. In addition to that, on the eastbound side, we are doing a full pavement reconstruction, meaning we're going to go all the way down to the subbase. Whereas on the other side, we're simply just doing concrete repair where we see fit. And the only quirky thing about this, typically when we design roadways, the outside lane is usually the wider lanes. That's where trucks or buses are. But as you can kind of see there, there's actually a 10-foot lane on that side. And the reason is because on this side we can control, it's going to be brand new pavement. We can control where the joint lines are. But because Patapsco Avenue is not an asphalt roadway, it's a concrete roadway, there are existing joint lines already out there. So for that reason, we kept that where it is, just so it wouldn't be offset from where the striping white edge line would be, or the skips would be. And as I said, once you get to the light rail station, it kind of mirrors itself, and I can explain later why we did that. But basically, the shared use path becomes on the westbound side, and we're actually not proposing sidewalk on the other side after the light rail station, or just after it, I should say. So go to the next, and the next few slides are just more snapshots of the corridor from a plan view. So you can kind of see here, this first image here is at Marmenko Court. This is just west of the light rail station, but this gives you an idea of what it looks like from a plan view, or to put it another way, looking down from the sky on the roadway project. So you can kind of see here the 10-foot shared use path that we were alluding to, the sidewalk on the westbound side that I was alluding to. There are a lot of driveway entrances and access roads on this project. So all the driveways will be upgraded so that they're ADA compliant, as well as, you know, compliant from a grade perspective as well. So all these businesses that have driveways or private properties, they will be getting new driveways as well. There will be ADA compliant ramps as part of this project. So you can kind of see here at Marmenko Court that these will be compliant ramps that are accessible for everyone. And I'll go to the next slide. This snapshot here represents the location just at the light rail entrance, the Patapsco light rail entrance. The first obvious thing here is this is where our main signal is going here. Today there is a signal out there, as Michael was kind of saying, but really you can only cross the light rail entrance today. It does not permit you to cross Patapsco Avenue. So to make it safer, we are going to have signals that permit pedestrians and bicyclists and other users to cross Patapsco Avenue safely here. What that entails is push buttons and countdown signals as well. So that will be part of the project. In addition to that, there is today, you can't see it right now, but there is what we'll call a channelized right turn lane or slip lane. We will be eliminating that from a safety perspective. What that does is it prevents people from rounding the corner too quickly. So by eliminating that channelized right turn, people have to make a sharper turn and slow down when they're making that right turn out of the entrance here. Also, there's a secondary benefit to that. It reduces the crossing time as well as the crossing length when you have to cross a wide entrance like that. Some other things to note. I mentioned earlier in the typical section that, on the eastbound side after the light rail station, we weren't continuing the sidewalk. It's still to be determined where that terminus is, where we're going to end it. The next street up, there might be some coordination with BMC, their Greenway Trail. So we might, if it's logical, we might stop there, or maybe we take it a little bit further to the next bus stop. But it's not going to continue all the way to Poti is the point. So it's still to be determined. It's still in coordination with MTA as well as BMC for that. Some other things to note here is you can kind of see on the left side there, the 10-foot shared use path basically stops there. And to continue, it actually starts at the top right there. So that's what we were talking about, switching sides. And the primary reason why we did that was, and I think Michael alluded to this, but MTA is exploring the idea of having a pedestrian bridge, overpass bridge. And so we want to send the traffic generation there if needed. And so that's the reason why we did that. Because today, unfortunately, people are using the light rail bridge itself to get to the light rail station. So I think MTA has been exploring options to make that safer and not have people actually walk on the tracks over the bridge. The next image here, this is, and we're making our way eastbound, by the way. So as we get to this location here, this is just before the bridge over the Patapsco River. We are actually not proposing anything on the bridge itself, with the exception of maybe some vertical delineation to continue on the protection for the shared use path across. But we are not doing any rehabilitation or concrete work or anything like that. In fact, there might actually be a dedicated bridge project by the bridge section at DOT for that. Something to note about this, up to this point, east of the light rail station, as Michael was kind of saying, we're working in coordination with DPW to improve the drainage here. That includes a new trunk line. So there's going to be a lot of work underneath the roadway, but up until this point, the trunk line does not go through the bridge. It's going to peel off probably where the 10-foot shared use path is labeled there, and then follow parallel with the bridge until it hits the Patapsco River, where it will outfall. And lastly, this image here is the easternlymost limits at Poti Street here. This is where we'll tie back in to Poti Street. We were scoped to just go up to Poti Street. We're not doing any signal work here. The signal here was upgraded to mast arm. I don't know when, but it was not too long ago, maybe 8-9 years ago. And so there wasn't a need at the time. But because we are changing the ramps here, we will do slight modifications to the push buttons, the countdown signals here. But we are not going any further than Poti here, which is the eastern limits of the project. Slide. And so just to reiterate some of the stuff that I've talked about. So we're going to introduce some, pedestrian friendly traffic signals, primarily at the light rail entrance here. All the pavement markings and signs will be, especially if they're not in compliance or if they're old, they're going to be upgraded. Crosswalks are going to be those high visibility, we call them continental crosswalks throughout the project. Street lights throughout the project limits will be upgraded to LED if they're not already. If they're those old, like high pressure sodium, they're kind of like the dingy yellow lights. And even the LED lights, some of them aren't up to code now, so we'll upgrade the old LEDs to the new ones as well, if needed. Michael alluded to this as well. In the commercial area, that's from Magnolia to the light rail station, we're going to have dedicated pedestrian lighting. Obviously, the drainage improvements, that's a big aspect of this project. Working also in coordination with DPW. Repairs to curb, inlets, things that need, to be replaced. Traffic calming is a big part of any project that we do at DOT. So one thing that we're going to try, you might see these a little bit more, but a little bit innovative is these new radar speed signs. This is not out on the project site, but this is just an example. But basically, you've probably seen these as you drive through, it kind of displays your speed, just for awareness, driver awareness, education, just so people are aware of how fast they're going. And related to that, DOT right now is exploring the idea of, currently it's posted 40 miles per hour out there, I believe. But they're exploring the idea of potentially reducing the speed limit. So that's in the works. No promises there necessarily, but the idea is to calm traffic on this project. Welcome. And so a couple more slides here before I turn back to Michael. Under the construction phase, so MTA access will be maintained. Specifically at the light rail entrance, there should not be any impacts. That light rail stop will still be functioning as it should be. All bus stops and buses will continue on schedule. Obviously, that's not to say that some might have to be temporarily relocated or we might have to set up a temporary bus stop, but there should not be, the goal is not to impact any of MTA's buses or their light rail station. In addition, property owners rest easy knowing that, hopefully their businesses and establishments aren't impacted as well. If there are any inconveniences, for example, when it comes time to construct that driveway, maybe it takes them a day, we'll construct the driveway entrance and hopefully, the next day, so, if we, the entrance might be open to traffic, depending on how big the driveway is, or maybe we have to split it up into two sections. We do half the driveway, let it cure, set, and then once traffic can drive on that, we'll do the other half of your driveway. But that's the idea. Typically, that's how it works is there should be minor inconveniences. We're not going to stop anyone from being able to access their properties, ideally. Usually construction hours for DOT, it's during off-peak hours, 9 to 3. For this project, because I don't think there is any residential frontage or anything, there might even be the possibility of extended hours if traffic permits. So that would expedite the construction schedule possibly. So, but typically it's 9 to 3, but on this project, it might be, the hours might be a little bit, the range might be a little bit longer. And lastly, the goal is not to have any detours on this project. We're going to try to maintain one lane in each direction under construction. And so to give you a visual of that, you could probably divide, the goal right now is to have construction be done in 2 primary phases. The first phase is we basically take one half of the road. In this case, let's use the eastbound side as an example. We'll construct all that. That will all be closed to traffic, and workers and construction workers will be able to work on that side, while maintaining on the other side, we'll convert it to one lane in each direction. As you can kind of see there, 12-foot lanes. And because there's no sidewalk today, we'll also drum off a 5-foot path so that if people need to walk, at least it's delineated, which is better than what we can say today. So while they're working on that, once that's completed, we basically shift sides. The side that we just completed opens up. We'll have a temporary one lane in each direction. Once again, we don't need to drum off any access for pedestrians because a shared use path or a sidewalk will already be constructed. And then under construction, we'll finish phase 2 on that side. And really the benefit of this is naturally, when you close off one side, that grass median is already a natural barrier. Otherwise, if we were to do one side at a time, we would have to set up concrete barriers, jersey barriers, and such. And that could add up. And at the end of the day, you might have to, relocate it and whatnot. But this really, you can set it up for long-term construction. So that's a benefit to this. And I think I'm going to hand it back to Michael here to close out as he talks about the estimate and schedule.
Thank you, Vincent. All right, so neat construction costs. Neat construction costs, that's the term we use. It pretty much just means how much we pay the contractor. So we're in between the 65% and the 95% stage. So at the 65%, the construction cost estimate was 18.8 million, but that does not include DPW's water line project and a lot of the storm drain project that we'll be incorporating that we get from Public Works. So we'll have a better number of the total cost once we get to 95%. And then we have administrative costs, which includes design. And then also there's other costs we have like inspection, et cetera. So it says here the project's federally funded. Doesn't mean the feds pay 100%. They do pay a generous up to 80%, which we're very thankful for. But with that 80% federal match, we do have to follow federal rules, and sometimes that kind of, there's a lot more I's to dot and T's to cross. For example, they have federal labor policies. There's policies like we had to buy steel that's made in the USA. We had to follow the state's ADA criteria. There's federal guidelines we had to follow, both for design and construction, as well as like environmental. But it's all good, so we're always happy to partner with them. And the feds typically just deal with the states, and then the states themselves, they administer the federal rules. So the feds kind of audit them from time to time, but we work with the state, and the state make sure we're compliant with federal rules. All right, so let me just go through these things. Our first meeting was in 2018, and when we met with the community, it was over in Cherry Hill, and we got some good feedback. That's how we decided to extend the job all the way to Pote Street, because they said, well, we don't want to get stranded, and we thought, well, that's a great idea. That's why we come out and listen to people. So we learned. Then later, during the concept phase, I said earlier, we had a lot of internal debates, and we're thinking, well, maybe this, maybe that, what about this? But we looked and eventually came down to principal alternatives, and we met the community on that. And afterwards, we all got the grand consensus, and then we presented that, was a little bit more advanced. That was 2 years ago. That was our advanced concept phase. And now we're at a fourth one where we're finalizing preliminary engineering and then move into the final phase. So that's the fourth meeting. That's what we're doing tonight. Complete final engineering. So it's probably going to take about 6 months for the consultant to finalize the design. The reason it's going to take a long time, there's a lot of drainage, there's a lot of different disciplines, there's a lot of people involved. And so we have to make sure that we're all coordinated and we're thinking these things through. The traffic control is complicated, the drainage is complicated, the sequencing, and then like when it gets done, like Jamie here or whoever from STV, they're going to make sure that all the plans coordinate. These things, were they like 150 plan sheets or 200, it could be huge in the specs. And we want to make sure everything's good. So when it goes out to construction, we get good bids and we don't get hit with claims and change orders, et cetera. But that'll take about 6 months, and then it'll probably take about another 6 months just to get everything right with the state. There could be other delays, for example, getting permits or right away or et cetera. And that's why we got spring of 26. If we can make it faster, we certainly will, but that's kind of what we're forecasting at this time. And then after we complete the engineering, we still get approval to advertise from the state, and then we advertise the project. Then we get the bids in. They have to be analyzed, make sure everything's compliant, all the legalities. A lot of that's because we have to go with the lowest responsive bidder. So we want to make sure that the lowest bidder is responsive to all the requirements in the documents. And then construction will probably take about 2 years. And sometimes there's always some kind of delay. Sometimes it's just like landscaping, or we got to wait till we can plant trees or grass. And that's why we have the extending just beyond 2 years. All right, so project challenges again. Money is always a big deal. The long project lengths, usually we don't have, this one's I think about 1.5 miles if you include the bridge. And then we had a lot of a need to reach a consensus exactly what we're going to do, which we've done. This drainage system, our project will drain into what Public Works is building. That's why it's essential that their system gets built first, so their contractors out of the way, so when we come in, we don't have people fighting for space, and when we put our pipes in, we have an outfall to connect to. Environmental permits, NEPA, that's a federal requirements like National Environmental Policy Act or something. But that's to make sure that we've dotted the i's and crossed the t's on community outreach and environmental impacts and alternatives. So we've got that process done. There could be some tidal floodplains that we have to, and wetlands that we could be impacting, as well as any work within pretty much 1,000 feet of tidal areas. You have to get a critical area permit. And what's not also mentioned on here, but it's very important, is the stormwater and the erosion sediment control. We'll be getting those approvals from a separate part of Public Works. The challenge is, again, complete streets is kind of a new thing, and so it's involving state of the art, state of the practice. So people have different interpretations, new things are coming in. So that's something we're implementing. Constructability is also a big thing with us. You can always draw something up, but then getting something built, that's a whole nother story. So there's always a big focus on end for that. Federal aid process, I mentioned that earlier. It's good. They help participate. They can pay a lot of the costs, but they have their own rules, and we got to, make sure we accommodate them. The lane lines at the concrete joints. So one of the reasons why we're doing that reconstruction for the 2 lanes is, and part of the typical section Vincent was shown earlier, to fit in the shared use path, we have to cut into the existing median a little bit. And when we do that, we didn't want a existing concrete joint line in the middle of a lane, because when you're driving, especially at night or if it's raining, it could be confusing as to where the lane ends as opposed to a joint mark. I've seen that in other parts of the town before, and it, we want to make sure we reduce the potential for accidents. Sight distance issues. Sight distance is something we just use. It just means how far you can see. So if cars pulled out or trucks are pulling out, there are a lot of trucks here that a vehicle can see them from enough distance to slow down and stop and avoid them. And there are certain rules about that based on the speed. So the lower the design speed, the less stopping distance you have, the less sight distance that you need. And so coordination is always very important. We are reaching out to MTA for the pedestrian bridge and other issues with them, like the entrance, as well as where the bus stop's going to be. And we coordinate tightly with drainage and the water main projects from DPW, and then some of the other previous projects that we mentioned, like the BMC Trail or whoever else is out there, or what Copart built. All right, so I'm Michael Wilmore. I'm the project manager. Here's my contact information. And our liaison for this District 10 is Sandra. I don't know if she wanted to say anything, but here's her contact information as well. So I think there's also some cards out front. I don't know if there's any comments. We got written comments. Sometimes we get them. So other ways we stay in touch with everybody is we have this website. It's called Streets of Baltimore. If you type this in, you might see this video from some singer from like 50 years ago, but that's totally unrelated. But a lot of our new projects are on the Streets of Baltimore website. And so this last bullet point right here says, the city DOT, we're very committed. We're interested in investing and improving Patapsco Avenue for all users. And so that's what we kind of present and to listen and to coordinate with people. And as it says here, it's not my neighborhood, it's everybody else's neighborhood and your avenue, your city. And so strong partnerships promote successful projects. Or as they say, teamwork is dream work. All right, so for this Q&A and feedback, why don't we see what questions we have here in person, Jamie, and then we can check who's in the chat. And for people attending virtually, submit all the questions through the chat, and then we'll read these out loud so everybody can hear them.
So, Michael, I think how this is going to work during this Q&A session is for those who are in attendance, and if you have a question, for the benefit of those online, if you have a question, raise your hand. We're going to hand you the mic, and then we'll stay up here and we can answer questions as well. So with that said, does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, so
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm a resident of Brooklyn and I avoid West Patapsco because of the excessive speed and the flat out drag strip activities that occur there sometimes. And so you mentioned on slide number 26, traffic calming. And I'm just speed limit reduction consideration. And I was wondering, so I have two questions. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more on that. Because the problem is it's just a long straight drag strip and people know that and they use it that way. I have seen 2 horrific crashes there in the 20 years that I've been a Brooklyn resident. And then my other question is with regard to the shared use path, do you intend on putting up any bollards so that people don't just cross it and, zigzag in and out of there? Because if it's level with the road, they will.
So right. So about speed, during construction, the speed limit will be expected to be 30 miles an hour. After construction, it could be lowered, maybe 30, maybe 35. We'll have to coordinate with our traffic people on that. But certainly, no matter what the speed is, speed posted, if people ignore the speed, that's a problem. So it's a difficult thing to address. So that's one reason why we typically have the narrower lanes than we used to. The push was in the past have a wider lane width, and that was meant to give like a buffer. And so it has some advantages, there's less room for error, but narrow lanes do tend to make people more cautious and they slow down. But it is kind of a straight shot. So we are concerned about people driving too fast. It's easy to do. You don't even pay attention. You got the music on and everything's good. And all of a sudden you realize you're going 60 miles an hour. And so that's one of the reasons why we probably put 2 of these in. And then we do have like the flashing beacon. If you're heading westbound, it's a little bit east of the light rail bridge. I don't think what we probably won't have bollards. We'll put in curbs up. They should be 8 inches.
It's not uncommon to see people doing 80 miles an hour on that road. It happens, and I just don't see, unless you do something to eliminate the perfect straightness of it, I don't know that this is going to work. It's going to work for a lot of great things, and I appreciate it. I'm thrilled to see it. But as far as reducing the speed, I think there needs to be more thought put into that. I'm not saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's engineering design, and then there's human nature. Engineering and design can be better and improved, and we can learn about construction. But fixing people, it's a lot more difficult. But a lot of times, yeah, if this was a newer road, we probably put some more horizontal curbs in, hopefully, because that does tend to slow people down as well. But this was built with primarily, before we had the beltway, it was just getting from A to B as fast as possible. Yes. Yes. Yeah, I don't know how much trees we can put in. Sometimes there's utilities in the way and the tree branches can't extend into the street, but yeah, yeah.
does anyone in person attendance, do they have any other questions? Feel free to just raise your hand. If not, I mean, you could always ask later. I might ask my colleague Elizabeth if there's anyone online that had any questions. I can hand over the microphone to you as well. Okay, no questions right now. I'm not sure how, do we give them a few minutes or?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, because I don't want to, marginalize anyone's opportunity to ask a question. So maybe they're stewing on it. So
So while we're waiting, I got kind of a funny story. I was coming back, had like a Lyft ride, like Uber. And I told this guy I was with DOT and he's like, yeah, this road, because this road we're on was kind of bumpy. He goes, yeah, this road's bad, but it's not like Patapsco. He said, I really wish that road would get fixed. And I said, yes, I've been working on that for like years now. And we would desperately want to get that fixed as well. So we are aware of that. A lot of people do care about this road and use it. And we mentioned like no detours. It's hard to detour this road because there's no alternatives. This isn't part of the city where it's a grid system. I think it was originally like a county road. And then the city expanded their corporate boundaries like 1918 and city acquired the right of way. But since then it's been expanded and the road was reconstructed about 1962 or something.
Buses.
And now, so the buses will have to share the 2 lanes that we have. Sometimes you might see downtown where there's like an outer lane that's painted red for buses, but excuse me. But every time we always have limited right of way and we always try to figure out how we can accommodate people walking, people on scooters, people on bicycles, the buses. This is an important bus route. There's 2 bus systems that come here. It's also a truck route. It's a bicycle route. And now we want to also make sure it works for the pedestrians. So yeah, they'll just have to share the traffic, one of the 3 lanes with the rest of the traffic.
could you hold on one second? Just
I was making the comment because it helps with traffic calming. Even if they share, if there is some signage that it says preference for buses or something, would be helpful for the traffic calming.
I guess I'll just one last call for any either in person or online. If anyone has any questions, if you are online, we recommend that you submit your questions through the chat system. I believe you are permanently muted, unfortunately, so it has to go through the chat system. And anyone in person, just feel free to raise your hand. Okay, I'm getting oh yes.
Yes, hi, good evening. I'm Manmohan Singh. I'm section manager with Department of Transportation Engineering Construction Division. I just want to highlight or point out one point that Michael mentioned in his presentation about the agreements or minor adjustment agreements with adjacent property owners. That's very crucial step. So if any business or residents are attending today, or anybody who have like properties right against adjacent to the Patapsco Avenue, within these limits, they will be receiving an agreement, minor, just a very basic agreement that we are coming next to your property, or in some cases like driveway reconstruction, which city will pay, do it on its own cost. There's no cost to the property owner. And we may need to enter your property during construction to redo or reconstruct that driveway to make it ADA compliant and grade compliant. But we need that agreement. Without that, we cannot move this project forward to finalize design and construction. That's a very crucial step. So if you can please spread the word. Okay.
Speaker.
You have the last word. So it seems like someone online has calling in by phone has a question. So we're going to unmute you. The last four digits are, or maybe. Uh, uh, oh, it's a 301 area code. So just give us 1 second and we're going to unmute you. Okay, while we're figuring that out, there is an online comment. So Elizabeth will be reading that.
So we've got Charlene from BMC, and it says, "Thank you all. This is a great project."
Thank you.
Wanted to get that recorded.
So unfortunately, for the person calling in with the area code 301, we are unable to unmute you. So, oh, okay. But if to follow up for your question, we just to go back to our contacts, if you want to send an email to Sandra, our community liaison, with her email there, please feel free. You can do that tonight as well, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. We apologize for that technical difficulty that we're having right now with those that are calling in by phone.
Yeah, again, this presentation will be recorded, and as soon as we can, probably about a week or so, we'll have this posted on Streets of Baltimore. All right, if that's everything, I think we'll just conclude the meeting. So thank you, everybody who attended, who helped prepare, our translators. I appreciate their work very much. Something I couldn't have done. So, and thank you to the people from STV and Manahan for bringing up that important issue about the right-of-way agreements.